Hello, and welcome to our three viewers. To start off, welcome to the cast Q&A for KWLT's production of The Devil's Disciple. We're really thankful to have everybody joining us today. If you have not yet had a chance to see this show, then you can go to our Canada Helps website or go to the KWLT website to find the link. Tickets to the listening of this show are by donation, and all of the funds will go to help get KWLT back on stage in 2022. The link to purchase the audio for this production will be in the chat. And we'll also pop a link for donations to KWLT in the chat as well. If you have any questions that you would like to ask the cast and crew as we go on through this Q&A, you can feel free to pop your own into the comments and into the comments section on our YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to bring in Joe Gull, the director of this production, first to give you an overview of the show. And then we will ask him a question, and then we'll bring in some of the cast to introduce themselves and let you know a little bit about their characters. So, Joe, first off, why don't you give us a brief overview of the plot for this production?
Plot behind Devil's Disciple. It takes place right around the tail end of the American Revolutionary War, right around 1777. And it centers around this one particular family. And in more specificity, the eldest brother of the family, Richard. The family is, in reviewing of them, generally puts the fun in dysfunction. Richard is an outcast among the family. The rest of the family is considered very pious, very good people, so to speak. Whereas Richard is, by the day, the complete opposite. And the impending arrival of the British are coming to town. Richard has already encountered them in a previous town where they hung his uncle. And now the worry is British are coming to town to try and make an example of somebody else, some notorious rebel. And I think Richard sees things a little more clear than most, as he's sort of unfettered by pious eyes. The most of the story in the second half was around Richard, the town pastor, and his wife, and a very interesting arc for the both of them, a juxtaposition of personality.
Great. So, Joe, I'm going to start off with some questions for you first. And I guess with one, what do you think was the most unexpected challenge that you encountered as a director for a radio production?
Always is the recording process. Even the rehearsal process, it's a little easier because your pool of talent can reach a little farther when you're rehearsing online, because people can do it from the comfort of their own homes. The problem you run into is so much of theater that magic you find comes from the spontaneity of having somebody there with you, being able to read their facial expression, their body language, magic in the moment. And when you're rehearsing online, you have technical issues. You have delays in camera, delays in audio. So it's a bit more of a much stiffer process than I was, and was sort of finding ways to work around that. Everyone brilliantly compensating for it, though. I would say uh, for audio productions, particularly audio dramas, uh, your sound or voice, for the most part, because essentially you are not casting for how someone looks. Uh, if if they look right for the part, what you everything is all about voice. Every person has to be able to communicate uh, perfectly. The audience has to be able to define their character, see their character strictly by what they're hearing, which is, I think, personally, one of the greatest challenges an actor can face, is to not be able to have the audience right there in front of you to grip them. Right, the only thing you have is whatever you can say and how you can say it, and then the audience is left with the aftermath of that, of interpreting it, which may not always be how you intended to communicate it.
And Joe, what do you think your biggest or best piece of advice would be to someone if they were interested in doing a virtual radio production, whether it's for KWLT or any other organization?
Uh, be prepared. Have a good crew going in. Uh, have people who know what they're doing, uh, can keep you on track, and handle the other, as because as a director in a strictly audio based production, uh, most of what you're going to be dealing with is just the story, the actors, the voices, all of that, and it is devastatingly overwhelming to focus specifically on that, because you can get hung up for so much, just worrying about the way somebody says something in particular. Um, so be prepared. Have a good crew. Uh, Make sure going in that you're ready to deal with things such as audio lag, video lag, uh, people's setups, sounds, the amount of noise that's in people's backgrounds while they're recording, uh, can certainly affect anything that you record. Uh, the greatest uh, piece of advice for anybody who's recording is use a phone in a closet. Wait until it's late at night. Take your lines, take a phone, go in your closet, record from there. Sounds crazy. Your neighbors probably think it's great because there's a tremendous amount of sound dampening. Smaller the closet, the better.
Great. Thanks for those pieces of advice, Joe. So I think what we'll do next is we will bring in all of the members of the cast who are here with us, and we'll have them go around and introduce themselves and which characters they played in the show. Now, the people you'll see here on screen are not every member of our cast. Unfortunately, we couldn't have everyone join us. So we are missing a few, who include Catherine, who played Mrs. Dudgeon. We are also missing Josh, who played our chaplain. We are missing Fred, who played General Burgoyne. We're missing Min, who played Lawyer Hawkins. We are also missing our British narrator, Kirsty. And I think we're also missing Charlie, who played Christy Dudgeon, Richard Dudgeon's brother. And we now have everybody who is here. So what I'm going to do is I'll go around the chat room as I see people on my screen and have you introduce yourself and your character. And we'll just ask you what your favorite part of playing that character was. So, in no particular order except that I see on my screen, I will start with Lenore, who played Aunt Dudgeon. Sorry, you go tell us who you played. I'll stop talking.
So I am Lenore, and I played Aunt Dudgeon, who we named Winifred Dudgeon. Originally, Aunt Dudgeon was two uncles, but for this production, decided that didn't need to have two people to split all of my enormous part. So I think that the most fun that I had playing this part was getting to just pretend to be extremely pious and sorry for my sister, who I don't think I was feeling particularly sorry for at the time.
I like that. I like that. All right. We'll have Greg. You're up next.
So I played Richard Dudgeon, or Dick, as everybody likes to call him. I had a lot of fun with this role. It was my second time doing it. I did it for a staged reading in 2016. But this time around, we spent a lot more time. So I got to actually, understand this character a bit more. And Richard, he's been through it. He wasn't brought up to be good. He was brought up just treated awful, and he had no even sense of right or wrong, really. He had to figure it all out for himself, and he created his own moral code that he lives by, and it turns out it's pretty good, and you wouldn't expect that the way he is. And it's been really great exploring that character.
Thanks, Greg. And up next, we'll have Natasha.
Hello, I played the American narrator, and I'm maintaining my narratorial anonymity tonight with my face off again. And I had a lot of fun learning that there isn't just one Southern accent. There are like thousands of Southern accents, and it was hard to stick with one because you think there's just one, but you have no idea you're actually talking in many different states' accents at once. So that was fun to try and keep on track. I've never acted with an accent before. So yeah, that was very fun.
Great. Victoria, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I played the character Essie, and I think the most fun part was playing someone younger. She's a teenager. She's had a rough life. So it was definitely interesting to try to have that come across in my voice, which I've never really had to think about before. So that was an interesting challenge. And additionally, I've never acted with an accent either. So that was also fun. A lot of YouTube videos, that's for sure.
Joseph, how about you?
Hello, everyone. I played Sergeant for this production. And there really isn't too much to say about my character, except that as I practice my accent more and more, which is Cockney, not the regular posh solo British accents, I'd have to say that it was not only tricky to read the lines, but also to make a character from the lines. Because the sergeant has his duty to his service, to the army, and to King George. But if anything, he's also sympathetic, even to people from another land or people that colonized from another land. So having to voice a character that is, well, technically possibly part of the bad guys, but at the same time, he's genuinely sympathetic with the people from the other side, especially if they're downtrodden or they're not in a good station, then go head on. I apologize for ranting, by the way.
No need to apologize. Actors don't love to speak at all. It's great. We all love the limelight. Matt, you're up.
Great. Hi, I'm Matt Walsh. I play the Reverend Anthony Anderson. I think my favorite part about my role is that the Reverend speaks differently depending on who he's addressing. So he's got this very calming public face in the first act when he's among the greater dudgeon experience. And then when it's just him and Judith in the second act, it's a very different sort of look at him. And then very different again in the third act when he comes back as the conquering hero. So he goes on a real journey there, and I quite enjoyed that.
And last but certainly not least, Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Kylan, and I play Judith Anderson. I really enjoyed this role because Judith, she has very different relationships with the different men in her life, and I think that those change over time. So I enjoyed thinking about how does she relate to her husband? How does she relate to this new man who acts in a way, an unexpected way, something she's not used to? How does she relate to the generals and the soldiers? And to think in this historical context too of the relationship between men and women during the Revolutionary era, I really enjoyed exploring that relationship between men and women in this role.
That's really interesting to hear. It's definitely not something that, oh, I guess I should, for context, say I was the stage manager for this production. Hello.
Yeah.
As well as being tonight's host. It's definitely something that I didn't necessarily think about while I was reading it as a stage manager on that side. So it's interesting to hear that that's what you are drawing out from it. So this is again round table, open to any one question. For those of you who may not have done theater in a while, what was it like coming back, but in a radio play format as opposed to on-stage theater?
I can say something quick about that. Strangely, actually, I feel like for a narrator, being in the kind of this environment where you're unseen and you're kind of this omniscient voice that's just behind everything is actually, it feels very natural for a narrator, maybe more so than being somehow visible on the stage. So interestingly, I feel like this might be a great spot for a narrator.
Is it okay if I add on to it?
Yeah, you go right ahead, Joseph.
Beautiful. I was just going to say that I've done a few stage plays actually for community theater all around, and I've also done like radio plays. I've also done recordings for radio stations, and the thing is that coming back to a radio play format compared to doing stage format, it's almost like that's actually, she said, it's almost like it's an environmental thing, more or less. With the environment of the stage, you have the people, or the audience in this case, and you have the crew, the staff, and you have the surroundings, which is the set, and also the seats, and the venue, the layout, everything. But when you're going to radio plays and whatnot, all you basically have are the studio, the walls, the foam, the floor, the chairs, the tables, and of course the microphones and the technical equipment. So going into radio play it's interesting that you have to try to act to equipment sometimes rather than to act to people. And all you got to do is just try to bring out everything that you got characterized in your voice, more so than visually through your face, your body, and your voice as well.
And did you find it difficult to do that? Like when we're on stage as actual actors, you're doing so much more movement and you're expressing yourself through your body. So did you find it more difficult to be acting, as you said, like to a microphone?
Yes and no. No, because the funny thing is that I have experience like voicing different characters, so it wasn't the hardest thing to do. But yes, also because this was a character that I was not familiar with, but more to the point, I've had more experience on stage and being in front of people than I have with just being in front of a microphone or a camera. So it was definitely an interesting experience after doing all the rehearsals together with everybody on Zoom, and then doing the recording on with actually every other cast member surrounding me for the most part. It definitely it definitely changed the dynamics, and the dynamics of it were somehow there was less, I guess you could say, middleman technology and more or less human interaction once we all got it together and put it through the recording.
Great, thanks for that perspective. Anybody else in the cast want to chime in on what it felt coming back to a radio play format as opposed to on stage?
I actually found it easier just because acting in your bedroom or in your home where someone potentially can't see you, I just found it was easier to kind of get into the headspace. I wasn't really thinking about people looking at me or trying or kind of look at me while I find a character. I was in my own room. I felt very comfortable, and I could really say whatever I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Although maybe my neighbors thought differently, I'm not sure. But I actually found it really comforting to kind of get into radio and really just focus on the voice, especially from my own bedroom.
Thanks, Victoria. Anybody else in the cast? No? That's Lauren's like maybe.
I was going to say, I was just going to say that this radio play has been my introduction to the world of community theater, and I think that for anyone who's looking at beginning or trying something in community theater, that a radio play is a great way to start. You don't have to memorize all your lines. You don't have to worry about performing live for an audience. So it's a great introduction. And before maybe taking that step to performing in a live play.
Great, thanks. That actually leads really well into our next question, which I'm going to throw out to, I think, Victoria and Natasha. What was it like in terms of learning your lines for this kind of show? Like, obviously, we didn't require any of the actors to memorize their lines, but Natasha, for example, rather than reading lines in a script as we normally do on stage, you were actually reading stage directions, because for this show, as you know, the stage directions were incredibly detailed. So can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like, sort of learning your lines and going through a play for the radio show?
Yeah, I can start off there. So like you said, basically what I'm reading wouldn't normally be heard by the audience. What I'm filling in is the visual aspect of the show. So I'm describing the surroundings, I'm describing the characters. At first, I felt a little bit like I was just taking up space because maybe no one cares where the doors are. But then I started to think more deeply about how I'm creating the environment. So in a way, I'm like the set designer and I'm like the costume designer because I'm the person that's putting those ideas in people's heads. And the way that I say these words and even just the intonation can suggest to them ways that they might picture these objects. It's kind of like a semiotic playground where I'm trying to effectively convey the signifier to get a signified in people's heads that they can make a really beautiful show out of in their imagination. So and then of course on top of that, the trick with the accent and trying to do all these tricky things without sounding comical or even just like it's a bad accent. But so trying to do all those things layered on top of each other was really interesting. And like I said, this would never be a thing in a non-radio play. I don't think anyone would ever have someone walk out onto stage, tell us where all the doors are. We can see them, unless of course maybe it's a production for the blind, which would be actually really cool. But yeah, so it was really interesting because this is a part that wouldn't have otherwise existed. So it was really fun to explore that.
While you were reading your narrator parts, did you ever find yourself like in your own head being like, "Oh, that's what this environment looked like," as you were reading those descriptions?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest with you, there were some things that I read and I don't actually know what they are. But then other things that I read where it kind of occurred to me that like this was just their day-to-day life, and I was now in this weird powerful position of creating that environment and these people in a weird way. Um, yeah, I tried not to think too hard while I was reading. I don't know if you've ever been like dancing or something and you suddenly realize you're dancing and then you can't dance anymore, kind of thing. So I didn't want to overthink what I was doing in the moment. Um, I think the key is just to know your lines well enough that you can say them as though you were thinking them on the spot, which is another kind of strange thing, I guess, with a narrator in that, I mean, it's not a character. They aren't supposedly thinking of things on the spot. In theory, that this is something that's been written down for them, some sort of fateful retelling of a story. So, yeah, a lot of layers there, a lot of weird stuff going on, but it was very, very interesting to deal with.
Yep, Jojo says that's how he pretty much dances all the time. So that's
I hope I
great.
get to see it one day, Joe.
Victoria, how about you?
Yeah, I found it, especially with the accent, I would actually write my lines, you know, if we were rehearsing and Joe really liked a specific take, I would really think about how I said those words and sometimes even write them out phonetically, just so I would understand the rhythm of the lines, and be able to replicate that. Because I've never really thought about replicating the way my voice sounds over and over and over again. Um, I feel like when you're acting maybe on the stage, you have a lot of different things that help you kind of get into a rhythm, like hitting your mark, you know, talking with different people, getting that, you know, backwards, that back and forth. And yeah, just really having it all come from your voice was definitely interesting. And especially with the accent, I I think my script is just notes with my lines phonetically, especially specific words like amen. I think we had multiple discussions as a cast if it would be amen or amen. And I wrote beside all of my amens how to say it so I would never forget. So yeah, I think that was a learning curve, and it brought me back to English class and reading Shakespeare and trying to remember rhythm. So, but it was fun, and it was very helpful to essentially whenever I read a line, I was reading it phonetically of how I said it multiple times before.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said it's almost like a rhythm and getting into that, and how that's really similar, I find, in that when you're doing onstage acting, you're writing down your blocking notes so much, almost more so than the feeling, because you're being in that space and actually physically acting. You sort of tend to get that feeling in your body, but you may need a little bit more prompting about like, oh yeah, I got to get that feeling, but over here. Whereas in
Mhm.
this case, you had to get the feeling in the way that you were speaking things as opposed to how you
Mhm.
were moving.
Mhm.
It's a really interesting point. I'd actually like to bring Lenore into this conversation as well, since she does so much set design for KWLT and for other productions. I'm curious how you felt being a character in the show and listening to those narrations, but also being able to see those words written on the page, and how you felt when they were being spoken in terms of what you would design for set if this were going to be a live production.
Yeah, thanks. It was a little bit at the beginning, it was almost I was just itching to get my fingers on this set and create something. He has got such a rich um, description of what the set is supposed to be, and the set pieces and the dressing, and he's very, very specific. I think because it is a historical drama, and I believe it was historical even when he was obviously when he was writing it, he was writing a historical drama, and he didn't want anyone to get it wrong. But yeah, it was really interesting, and I really love that Joe decided to include those descriptions into the radio play, because I think it really does. Um, it really, even if you're not like, okay, so the door's over there and the table's over there and the chair's over there and there's a fireplace next to the door and the window above the fireplace, like you're not going to have that go necessarily going in your head and laying out a set while you're listening to it, but it gives you um, such a sense of the atmosphere and such a sense of place and such a sense of, I think that um, stage sets really give a lot of background information, a lot of visual cues to a show, and they can oftentimes show how much work has gone into the play and into the production, right out of the gate before any of the actors come out and start showing you all of the hard work that they've done. And I think that it was a really great, because it sort of gave you, with the narration, it gave you a bit of that feel of the work that usually goes on behind the scenes, and the kind of thing um, that you get when you go into the theater and you sit and you've got your anticipation of the scene, and you get to look and go, oh, I wonder where they're going to come in, and I wonder what they're going to say. And I think it really added to that. As a set designer, I was a little bit heartbroken not to be able to do the sets for them. I really think that they had a lot going for them, and I think that it was super fun to do. Um, but I'm glad that they got, they sort of were included anyway, as much as you can in a radio.
You mean you really wanted to source the China peacocks and the very specific China dogs and
Yeah, it would have been extremely difficult to get all of those pieces and have them all be historically accurate. So there was a small part of me that was like, I don't have to do all of this. Okay. But I still think it would have been great.
Thanks. Let's bring Joe in on this discussion as well. As the director, you made the choice for this radio production to have narrators read the stage directions. Can you tell us a little bit about that choice and why you decided to make one British and one American?
Well, a lot of it came from a desire to not want to have a bit of a hollow transition between places. In reviewing the dialogue, once we started taking out the stage directions, uh, it made me think of, because there is so much body that takes place around the dialogue, how would the audience ever know? So much that sets the scene, so much fills that atmosphere. About it wasn't there. I used to listen to a lot of audio dramas when I was a kid, even now still, and I always appreciated that little ambiance. That's something that filled it. You know, uh, gave you an idea of what it was you were listening to and how. So it became a series. Specific stage directions were necessary to leave in to provide that atmosphere, which ones to take out, because there were certainly redundant stage directions that didn't need to be there. And then figure out how to format those between our American narrators and our British narrators. The split between the two came more out of a desire to always have this ever-present tension or boundary that's always there, setting that pace, that for the audience to know that there's always those two sides are present, sort of facing each other, and the stakes are very high.
Great, thanks, Joe. I think I would now like to bring Greg into the conversation again. Greg, as you mentioned earlier, you have played the role of Richard or Dick Dudgeon before in a staged reading for KWLT. So I'm wondering what you found different this time around, going from a staged reading to an audio production, and what you enjoyed the most, not necessarily about your character, but just in terms of maybe how this differed or what you enjoyed about this method of production.
Well, I love doing voice work, so it was nice to be able to just focus on that. Of course, I was doing all my regular facial acting at the same as well as the voice work, because you really can hear it if someone isn't sneering or smiling, and it just helps me to stay in character. I also kept all of the stage directions in my head. Made sure that they were all still in my script, even though I didn't need them. I still wanted to know, all the beats. Where is Richard supposed to be? Where is he standing when he says this? Like, what to help with motivation and things like that. And it was a little tricky because we're all at our individual stations recording. We're not on a stage. There's no eye contact. Because we're not off book, so we're at a recording station reading our script. So it does take you out of it a little bit. So I would just try and keep it all in my head, with those directions, just picture that I was there, and that helped me.
Did you find that because this wasn't a staged reading, as you said, we're often at the beginning, especially rehearsing, on Zoom away from everyone else. Did you find that you approached the character of Richard any differently than you did in the staged reading, or was there anything that you got the chance to get into a little bit more than the first time around?
So the first time around, it was only a week, so we would meet on the one weekend and we would all read it together as a group, and then we would part ways, and a week later we'd come back and spend the whole day on it. So we'd have I don't know, like a few hours to run it a few times, talk about it, and then we'd do it that evening. So it was kind of like, hey, this is fun, let's act it. But this time it was like a real show in the sense that we had time to rehearse it, we had time to think about it, we got a lot of feedback, time to think about the feedback, really more like a real show. So before I was just having some fun, and they call me Captain Cold Read sometimes because I can just sit down with a script and just do it, because I can something with processing, I can just read a line off without any stumbling, and it just sounds pretty good. So people were impressed the first time around, but cold read can only get you so far. You really need to get into that character and really think about the lines, read them slowly, read each line, each word, think about how would he say this? How does it sound if you read it this way? And you got to play with that a lot more. And I really felt like I came a lot closer to Richard, which is kind of scary. He's a bit of a weirdo, but still a lot of fun. And I was saying to Joe, it was great to do this because it felt like there was something unfinished with the character. And now it feels about 2/3 done because I still haven't done it in a staged production. So if anybody wants to do Devil's Disciple, I'd do it again.
So what you're saying is you'll go on stage and direct yourself.
Oh, I don't know about
You're like, oh, I don't know. That is hard, I will say.
Yeah.
Not an easy thing to do. But that's good to know that you'd like to come back if KWT wants to, third time around. Oh, it looks like Joe would like to potentially get in on this conversation. Nadia, if you wouldn't
Ooh.
mind. Our producer will add him in. You want to say something there, Joe? You're there you go.
No, I was literally raising my hand to say that, like, I'll direct it. Greg can start his returns. We're already well on our
Please.
way.
There you go. It's on offer. Was there... Oh, Joe. So besides, as you said, like not really getting a chance to... Oh, Matt Walsh is saying this would apparently be the 4th time because Devil's Disciple was actually KWLT's second production back in 1936.
Oh, a little before my time.
Wow. So then we'll just do it in 2036.
there's a
You're
deep
still
dive.
down for that. You still got time. So with the stage reading, as you said, Greg, you didn't really get a chance to super like delve into Richard. Is there any other reason that you felt that you wanted to come back to the character, or particular things you really wanted to explore with him in a sort of more, not fully rounded, but slightly more well-rounded method of production?
I remember really liking it the first time around. I don't have a lot of memories specifically about what I would want to try with the second time around. I just remember really enjoying the show. It was a great cast back then, and Adrienne Dandy was director, and she's always a pleasure to work with. And yeah, there was. I just wanted more from it. There was. We were almost going to do costumes for that one, even though it was just a reading. And she brought this really awesome coat for Richard. We didn't end up using the costumes for whatever reason, but we had a little Q&A session after that one as well. And I remember the audience was so great. And I was like, there was going to be a cool coat. And I was like, wait, I'm going to show you the coat. And I ran off stage and I brought it on. I was like, did a little twirl. I was like, so I got to show it off.
Coat of many colors.
Well, it was all black.
Or the roll of many colors.
Oh, yeah.
You get to change it every time. Thanks, Craig. Let's see. I think let's bring in... Oh, how about Matt and Joseph? That would be great. Hi, Matt. Hi, Joseph. We've touched a little bit on this before when we asked what it was like coming to the radio play format instead of on stage. But how did you find the rehearsal process differed compared to rehearsing for an on-stage production?
Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I guess because of the convenience, I guess, of rehearsing from home, things were scheduled much more finely, with the expectation that you don't have to worry about travel time, etc. You can just, you show up for this 15-minute interval, and then, you wait around for a little bit, and then you have your next scene 10 minutes after that. I mean, in terms of the just rehearsal itself, the fact that we didn't have to worry about memorization is actually a big one, right? So we didn't, we could concentrate on the interpretation of the lines and not have to make sure you're getting the lines right every time, because there they are, right in front of you, happy and friendly.
Well, I'm also going to say that doing the lines on screen compared to memorization, it was sometimes a blessing, but it was also sometimes a curse, because one with mild dyslexia, such as myself, sometimes my mind just likes to flip words into different parts of the sentence. And I'm always glad that Monica or Joe just reminds me, nope, you got to say it this way. It's like, oh, you're right, darn it. So the thing is that with compared to like the rehearsal process for doing it through Zoom for the most part, instead of doing it like on a stage, it applies basically to the first answer that I gave, which is basically it's just a matter of environment. It's just a matter of timing. It's also just a matter of like the scheduling is actually a lot more not only clear cut but crisper, thanks to our dear Monica here, and if anything, and also to our wonderful director Joe, actually, for giving us good direction and also suggestions for our vocal performances, especially on Zoom, which doesn't have the best audio capabilities of capturing our vocal aesthetics. But if anything, the rehearsal process was actually, I'd have to say, more utterly relaxed but also focused at the same time, because as we were actually going through the process of the rehearsal, we were actually not only reading the lines, but also actually listening to the lines as they go along. And you're like, oh, see what the actor's going with this way through the lines instead of what I would do to go that way. Oh, that's it.
Great.
One other
Thanks, Joseph.
one
Yeah,
other thing
go ahead, Matt.
I might add, actually, the recording process itself, sort of taking the place of the dress rehearsals and the tech weekend, was super weird because it was not done chronologically in terms of the production. In terms of, like, Act 1 did not necessarily come before Act 2, before Act 3. It was all based on what people were available for in terms of scheduling. And so after the initial read through, I don't think we ever actually sat down and did the play in the order of the play. So that's maybe the oddest thing about it from my perspective.
You
Makes
are
me
correct.
makes me appreciate people who do this all the time in television and film that much more, right?
And we haven't even actually, unless we basically listened to the production itself actually through KWLT's website, actually, we haven't actually heard it. We never got to hear like our production of it, the completed version, until Joe and Monica released it for the public to see.
That is true. We kept it a secret and surprise even from the cast. And as you can see on screen, if you have not yet had a chance to listen to our production of The Devil's Disciple, it's still available for one more week. You can get your tickets at the Canada Helps link that is posted on the screen and also in the chat section and comments section. We appreciate your support. All of the money raised is going towards KWLT's restart to live theater, which we will get to at the end of this talk. We've still got a little bit of time left, so I'd like to bring everybody back into the chat. And we'll talk a little bit more about how in theater, as actors, we usually use our body, our facial expressions, and our voice to show and convey emotions and the story. So this is going out to everyone. I'm going to ask you what it was like using only your voice and, as Greg said, still sometimes those facial expressions, especially during recording when you're actually sitting across the table from your fellow actors, to really get those feelings and thoughts across.
Yeah, I can say that it was really important, I found, to visualize the scene still. And as Greg was saying, use those facial expressions. But since I was just reading the script and not making eye contact, I found that I still had to, in order to get nuances across, really picture, like you would in your listening to the recording, like it's a movie in your head, to really use that visualization process to help get nuance through in the voice.
This is the fun part where everybody goes all at once. Joseph, you go right ahead.
Okay. I thought I was going to play with everybody just blabbering nonsense, actually, until we got a point across. But acting through voice is actually one of the oldest and most interesting things about human art more than anything. I mean, humans have communicated with their voices for thousands of years. And it's only recently that we've been able to, in history, to actually record it through technology, or to actually keep a copy of our vocal and sonic aesthetic, or what we deliver to from one person to another, actually telling a story or presenting one, depending on how well you do it. But the voice itself it's the oldest, but it's still the most phenomenal instrument, that it just captures the essence. And it can have, like, as Lauren actually said, it has certain nuances. It has certain little tweaks, dynamics, aspects, aesthetics, anything that you can use to make it go higher, make it go lower. But if anything, it's with the radio production that we did for this, and that's what I'm getting to, is that it kind of throws me back that we're still doing one of probably the oldest, but yet oldest basic, but also the most fundamental aspects of storytelling, and that is through our voice, more than anything.
Thanks, Joseph. Yes, Lenore?
So this was like Lauren. This was my first foray into the not behind the scenes. It was my first show where I've acted since high school, really, which I'm not going to talk about how long ago it was. And I think that it was really, really interesting not only to notice how I myself, like Greg, was sort of face acting while I was doing it, but how many other people, this wasn't like radio where you're just sitting there and talking on the microphone and the next song is going to be such and such from so and so. And it's, it was really interesting to be at the recordings and to actually see all of the acting and all of the work that was going into it as everyone was recording their lines. It was, I wish that we'd had some video of it because it would have been really cool.
I wish I had thought to record on video some of the actual recording process in our blanket fort that we created. For the audience who's currently watching this to visualize, we set up 4 green screen stands all around our recording booth and literally hung blankets everywhere, including one with my face on it, for the actors to sort of deaden some of that outside sound that we had, and then had socially distanced microphones at the opposite ends of a table for people to record. So we only ever really had 4 people in our blanket fort recording booth at 44 Gaukel at one time. Joe, as a director, what was it like for you having to really only direct the voice and the emotion as opposed to also having to deal with, oh yeah, I need him to be over here at this point and working with blocking? Oh, I think we lost Joe. That's okay. So we are almost out of time, but
It actually.
Oh, there he is. He's back. Go ahead, Joe.
When you're working with.
Oh, we're losing you again. If you want to type it in our chat, I'll make sure that it gets out to you people.
What?
There's a lovely delay on your end, Joe. So if you want to type what you'd like to say in the chat, I will make sure it gets out to our viewing audience. In the meantime, we're almost out of time. We've got a couple things to wrap up at the end. So, nope, still leggy. Sorry, buddy. You type away and we'll make sure it gets out there. So to everybody who's here with us right now, is there any part that you enjoyed about the rehearsal process or the recording process, or just being a part of this show in general that you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Okay, so I'm going to share something here. I have almost never been on stage in my life, but somehow I have a recurring actor's dream where I'm backstage and I haven't the slightest clue what my lines are, and I'm supposed to go on, and everything's very stressful. You don't have to do that for radio, which is fantastic, and it's the only that came out wrong. Not the only reason I'm doing this, but it was one of the main reasons why I felt comfortable approaching this project, was because I knew I could just concentrate on what I was saying and have a good time, because you get to read off the page. Not to ruin any of our crazy trade secrets, but it made it very comfortable and a very fun experience. There was zero stress, and I really enjoyed that. For anyone looking to get into it.
It's funny, I was just talking about that with an actor friend of mine who's here tonight. normally when we did our first show together, she was used to me being so calm-headed and cool about everything, but for our opening night, she saw me just like start to get all antsy and just so many jitters, and because that's my process before I go on stage. I get it all out and then I go, because if you wait too long, you go out there and you're like, oh my god. So I make sure I get it all out of my system before I go on. With this, you don't have to do that. You just recording it, you get to, it's out there for people to listen to. But tonight I started to get all jittery because it's live and you gotta kind of perform for people, and it's like, so tonight I'm getting my opening night jitters out of the way. It was kind of fun.
I also really enjoyed the fact that there was no opening night. I think that being my first on stage, if you'll forgive the expression, show, it was really nice to be able to go, oops, I did that line a little bit awkwardly. Can I redo that? Or I said something backwards, or I lisped here. And it was a really relaxing experience. And I think one of my favorite parts was in between the recording things when Joe would just lose it and burst into song and dance around the booth. I think that was one of my favorite things in this whole production.
Oh, I'll say something. One thing that I really enjoyed the most from this show, it's always the people. The people that you rehearsed with, that you work with, and that you just get the show done and over with. And also just the people that you make bonds or connections with, however they may be. And even if it's through Zoom or on stage or even at the radio, I'm just grateful that I can still connect with people one way or another through the artistic mediums that I can. And I hope that everybody else feels the same way too, one way or another.
Yeah, I can add to what Joseph was saying, that I really enjoyed the collaborative aspect of creating this radio play, and I learned a lot from listening and observing the other actors, and just was amazed by all the effort and organization that the stage manager did, and the notes from our director, and that collaborative piece is something that I enjoyed the most.
Looks like we might have gotten Joe back. You want to try and say something, Joe? Oh, no. We might try and actually, Nadia, can we get the actors off for now? And we'll see if just having Joe on will let him connect. Alrighty. Joe, is there any last words? There we go. Is the director you'd like to add? So while we wait for Joe's laptop to load, we do have a couple things as KWLT to mention before we end this stream. We would like to announce that we are going to be hosting auditions for KWLT's next show, Ali and Ali, the deportation hearings. Auditions will be taking place on Tuesday, November 30th, Wednesday, December 1st, and Thursday, December 2nd from 7 to 9:30 p.m. each night at KWLT's theater space at 9 Princess Street East in Waterloo. If you're interested in learning more about the show and the roles available, please visit our website at https://kwlt.org. And that link will also be in our chat. We also want to let you know about an upcoming event that will be happening with KWLT, and that is our Telephone Madness, which is an audio-visual miscommunication game. Think the game of telephone from your childhood. That'll be taking place on Saturday, December 4th at 7 p.m. on KWLT's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscriptions we get, then maybe one day we can actually have trailers on our site. I want to thank everybody who has been watching this live Q&A with the cast and crew of KWLT's The Devil's Disciple. Nadia, if you just want to bring everybody up for a second, that would be great. And again, we want to thank all of you for participating in KWLT's radio production of The Devil's Disciple. The audio is fantastic. I should also mention Rob Kerwayne, our fantastic audio editor, who added in all of the sound effects and music and pieced this whole thing together for us after the recording process. So thank you very much for Rob for bringing this to fruition. We also want to thank Nadia for being our producer this evening for this live stream. Thank you to Joe for directing the show for KWLT. If you are interested in putting together a radio production for KWLT or getting involved, please feel free to visit our website, again, kwlt.org. You can also send an email to secretary@kwlt.org or info@kwlt.org if you would like to learn how to get involved with our organization. We can't wait to see everybody out at the auditions and at Telephone Madness, and we hope to have a season announcement out for you soon to have theater back on stage at our space at 9 Princess Street. Thank you all again for joining us this evening, and I hope you enjoy listening to KWLT's production of The Devil's Disciple. Thank you and good night.